Hello, YouTube. I have a great episode for you today. I speak with violinist Lynn Kuo, who's assistant concertmaster of the National Ballet of Canada Orchestra, and she is the brilliant mind behind Violin with Dr. Lynn. For all the information about Lynn, you can go to lynnkuo.com and you're going to find all of the social media handles here below in the description of this video. We had a lot of fun talking about a multitude of topics that I think you're going to resonate with. We talked about the impact of a supportive teacher and what it has on us, performance psychology, improving our playing through mindfulness and self awareness, practicing with the scientific approach, cultivating positivity and success through gratitude and resilience, and how to overcome self doubt for us musicians. And before I pass on the mic to Lynn, I want to invite you to join me April 4th through 6th for a brand new, absolutely free workshop called Mastering the Stage. We're going to talk about what is holding you back, why it is that you know what to do, but you're not doing it, and how to really manage your mind to start getting the results that you want on stage. We're going to cover all of the stumbling blocks, everything that's holding you back. So make sure to sign up. Go to mindoverfinger.com right now, find the tab for Mastering the Stage, and join us April 4th through the 6th. It's absolutely free. And it's going to be jam packed with information on how to get you to experience the type of performances that you want. So, have a great time with Lynn. This conversation was so much fun. And until next time, à bientôt. Lynn Kuo, I am so happy to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, Renee. It's been a while since we connected. I think we saw each other in Chicago last year. Almost, I think it was exactly last year,
Yes.
Valentine's Day of last or something like this. Yeah,
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
that time. Yeah.
And what's, special about us is we used to go to the same competitions as kids. So we didn't know each other back then, but
Yeah.
you and I have been in the presence of each other since, shall we say, the early 90s, late 80s.
Are we doing that? We're dating ourselves now for everybody. Okay, fine. It's on the record now.
Lynn, I would love to hear about your journey. So, can you please share with us? That's the question I ask all of my guests, a little bit about that musical journey that you've had, how things unfolded for you.
Okay, I don't want to bore anybody, but let me see if I can make this the most interesting story possible. I actually was Lynn the pianist first as a child. And then I added violin 2 years later at the age of 9, so 7 and 9. And at some point, Lynn, the pianist, who also played the violin, suddenly became even. So I was both violinist and pianist. My teachers wanted me to choose, and eventually violin won. So I'm going to make this story really quick. So violin became my more predominant identity when I went to National Youth Orchestra in Canada. And I wasn't able to practice the piano. So that's the deciding year that helped me focus on one instrument only. Now, with that said, I do have a piano in my living room. It was actually shipped. My parents shipped it across the Atlantic Ocean from my hometown in St. John's, Newfoundland, all the way to Toronto. And I remember actually this really cool story where this white shipping delivery truck with this Newfoundland flag on the outside came through downtown Toronto and parked right in front of my building. I was so excited. They're out this father and son delivered my piano. So I was reconnected with my piano. So it sits in my living room where I can access it when I'm studying scores as a violinist and as a teacher. So it really does come in handy. I came to Toronto as a music student for Bachelor of Music in Violin. I completed 3 degrees, so I eventually got my doctoral musical arts at University of Toronto. Laurent Fenybish was my main teacher, and I love him dearly still. Actually, his photo is right here. May I show it to you? For
Yes.
everyone out here. Yes. Yeah. So
Yes.
I miss him dearly. And he sits next to me when I teach to remind me to have integrity when I teach and when I practice. So after completing 3 degrees, I had also, in the meantime, become assistant concertmaster of the National Ballet of Canada Orchestra. I've been there for a good number of years, more than 23 years, actually. I got my job when I was in my master's degree. So then fast forward many years later, many years later of freelancing, playing in an orchestra, I then became a visiting assistant professor of violin just for a couple of months at Memorial University of Newfoundland. My semester was not finished because the pandemic hit and I didn't get to finish my semester. And I decided to take an entrepreneurial course for musicians. And all of a sudden, I became an online entrepreneur and started coaching violinists online. So now I'm an online coach for high level violinists around the world, in addition to returning to my orchestral career. So I do both.
Mm, I love that path. One thing that really strikes me is what you said about Mr. Fenevesh. I can sense your love for it. I know you shared a beautiful post about him a little bit ago on Instagram, and I'm going to invite all of the listeners to go follow you on Instagram, your Violin Quo. And I'm going to have all these links in the show notes, of course. And I read the portion of your website also where you tell the story so beautifully. So I'm going to invite the listeners to also visit your website. I'll have all these links as well, where you explain that transition between pianist to violinist a little bit more in details. And that's one question I would love to ask right now. So you teach online, you have these wonderful programs that you're going to tell all about. You're going to tell us all about it a little bit later. But it is so special to have this kind of relationship with the teacher, that we feel this way, that we have a picture of them on our desk. Not everybody gets to experience this. Um, what do you think this type of instruction has brought to you, and how does that translate now to the way you teach?
Mr. Fenyvish was the Yoda of violin teachers, all knowing, wise, classy, caring, like everybody's grandfather. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was part of his family. And for better or for worse, your family gives you tough love sometimes. I want to share this
Mm.
really almost semi-embarrassing story of how I showed up to my first, I think it was my first violin lesson with him with black nail polish on. He was teaching me, I don't know, maybe it was a scale. I don't know what I was playing. And he paused midway from what he was saying. And he says, I do not like your nails. And I just wanted to disappear into a hole right there. And then I wanted to go and scrub the black nail polish off my fingers. It was so mortifying. And then there was another time where I had won the concerto competition and was going to play Mozart Fourth Concerto with the chamber orchestra. And I was getting ready for the concert, and Mr. Fenyvish was helping me prepare. And he saw that I had made my schedule so busy. I had accepted a gig to play a wedding, 1 week there, and I accepted to play a little gig in an orchestra somewhere north, somewhere in the city. And he said, "Are you making enough time to practice for this concerto?" And I think crossing through his head was, I have a student who just won the concerto competition. Is she going to make a fool out of me? So I think that's what was running through his head. So I have um, gone up to his home in Toronto, in Forest Hill in Toronto, and he gave marathon lessons. He would give 90-minute lessons regularly, but when you went to his home, they would last for hours. It was awesome. Um, and I remember him speaking in Hebrew to his wife, dear Vera Finyesh. And I heard him say, Lynn, and he said something in Hebrew, and he said, disappointment. I was mortified again. So I went, and then he said to me, you, before the concert, do not have any time but to practice. You don't even have time to go to the bathroom. All you have to do now is go practice Mozart, 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 Mozart. He was making it very clear that I was not ready for the concert. Other than that, though, Mr. Fenyus was absolutely wonderful. He cared so much about all of us, and I feel like this care from him in infuses the way that I want to work with the people that I coach. I hope that people who work with me can sense the integrity and the passion and the care that comes with guiding people on their best journey, because that's exactly what Mr. Fenyus did with me. So I met him when I was, I think, only maybe 12 or 13 at first in Banff. And then I decided to study with him when I was a teenager. And I was really young. I think I was 14, 15 at the time when I first started studying with him. And then I decided I'm going to study with him for my music degrees. So having a teacher that is supportive of you is so important, because I have encountered so many violinists who actually have told me I have had terribly mean teachers. I've had abusive teachers. I've had teachers who didn't guide me. And it makes me so sad to hear that, because I feel very, very lucky. I've never had him yell at me. I've never had a teacher abuse or, God forbid, be inappropriate with me. I've never had that problem. And I've heard a lot of horror stories from other violinists.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel that in my work as a coach, I spend so much time helping people through the trauma that they've experienced from teachers like this. And I'm so glad that the culture is slowly changing,
Yeah.
but it's not even that long ago where I think that was so frequent. It was just found
Yeah.
everywhere where you
Yeah.
have these tyrannical teachers. I don't even know if that's how you say the word, but I think you know what I mean. Like
Yes, I
tyrants.
do. Yes. Yes.
And I just feel that that is one way to push people to excellence that comes at such a high cost down the
Yeah.
road.
I
Yeah.
agree. It pushes them to high levels, but what pain does it cause? What trauma does it cause? What consequences are emotionally going to come out because of that? This kind of quasi-verbal abuse. This is not necessary to excel at all. In fact, I would prefer to see people push on the side of encouragement and positivity. I mean, people may say, okay, we're in this era now of too much encouragement and too much padding of people's accomplishments. I mean, I understand that. We don't want to go to the point where we're never giving someone critique. Yes, we do want to give people fair critique. Um, but I think the days of harsh teaching are gone. I
Yeah.
think they are. Yeah.
Yeah. I call it a character attack because it goes deeper than just the things that you're doing. It's sometimes it really reaches your core, it reaches your inner fiber. And when
Mm,
a teacher impacts you this deeply negatively, that seeps out into everything else in your life. So I think
hmm.
that it's a big responsibility on all of us to figure out how to get that excellence out of our students or clients in the way that is loving. I love these words that you're using with integrity, uh, the way you talk about the way you felt supported and cared for, that it shows that it's possible.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely possible.
Lynn, I was talking to some clients about the fact that I was speaking with you, and they were very curious about what life is like as a ballet musician. Do you want to talk to us a bit about that?
Sure. Well, the there's a very big divide between the musicians and the dancers. People always ask that, oh, do you get to hang out with them? And unfortunately, not really. In the previous building that we were in, we could see them in the green room and on the main floor. In fact, I think there were poker games between the conductor and the musicians and the dancers at one point. Now that we're actually in a much different building than before, we're in the Four Seasons Center for the Performing Arts in Toronto. So as soon as you get to the stage door, you might see a couple of dancers enter in, and they're unmistakable. Their posture, the way that their gait, their hairstyle, their fashion, and then you see us schlepping our instruments in. As soon as you walk through the backstage entrance, we go our separate ways. The dancers go up an elevator, and we go down a level. So we go right down to the pit level. Therefore, physically, we are at distance. We don't even see each other until we get maybe to the performance. And speaking of which, the dancers are training for months. They're rehearsing for months. They're learning the choreography. They are rehearsing predominantly with a pianist and the orchestra conductor. Then the orchestra conductor meets us, musicians, for just what? Two rehearsals and a dress. Maybe if it's a new work, three rehearsals, then a dress rehearsal at the theater. So the dress rehearsal, which is what, the day before opening night, is the first time we will see the dancers, and we'll peek up from the pit if you're lucky to be forward enough in the pit to have a view or partial view of the stage. But most of the musicians are hanging underneath the stage, so they see nothing. So the most contact we will ever have is on at the dress rehearsal. Or if we want, we could opt to take our afternoon off and watch maybe the piano dress. And even then, we're watching bits and pieces of them going through the motions of their of the show. Um, Very rarely do we actually hang out. At one point, when I was closer in age to many of the dancers, we did. But now that the orchestra, when obviously the orchestra members age and they continue their careers, and the dancers, they end their careers a lot sooner. So now many of my friends are retired dancers. So I still hang out with them, but they're all at the stage of coaching the next generation of dancers. So if that answers the question, there's a lot of divide between the ballet musicians and the ballet dancers.
That's very interesting. And I can say that it's kind of a similar experience here with the Joffreys in Chicago. It's
Yeah.
it's very interesting, and it could be so much fun to get to create opportunities for the two groups to interact a little bit more. I think that would make the performances even more special.
Yeah, I think when it does happen, and it does, I mean, I played Bach Sonata Number One in G minor, the Adagio, with a principal dancer on stage, and that was really cool. And it does happen. We had a ballet with a string quartet on stage. There's going to be Britain string quartet on stage. When it does happen, it's very cool, and it becomes more collaborative and more. It becomes more communicative between the musicians and the dancers, and then ideally when the right choreographer comes along and they have a musicality sense of great musicality, then you can see things really come alive. That's when the magic happens.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Yes. I want to talk all things violin quote. Now,
Okay.
I love your online content so much. You talked about how you took this entrepreneurship class, which got you on your way to sharing your voice, sharing your ideas, and this mission that you have. But I'd like to know what prompted you to start all of the teaching that you're doing right now.
Okay, that's a great question. I think I always had a knack for teaching. I was teaching when I was a teenager, actually, teaching piano lessons, teaching violin lessons. I made a little bit of money on the side as a university student teaching. But once I started playing as an orchestral violinist, I somehow discontinued. So when I applied for that university position at Memorial University, that was just supposed to be 4 months. I became that overnight professor really quickly after just being concealed in an orchestra pit for so long. So that was quite a stressful journey, actually, to become a professor overnight. And somehow that baptism by fire paved the way for me to become an online entrepreneur and online educator because somehow I started recording a lesson. We had a big, massive snowstorm in Newfoundland. So the students couldn't come in. And the students had to take their class. So I decided to film the contents of the class. And little did I know that was the beginning of me filming content. And they actually gave me feedback and said, you know what, we actually prefer the video because then we can actually slow it down, rewind it, play it again. I said, oh, yeah, that's really interesting. It's actually beneficial to have asynchronous content. So little did I know this was the infancy of creating content as educational material for violinists around the world. So when I started becoming an entrepreneur, I then had to do this another baptism by fire. How do I create content? How do I work this cell phone? How do I point the camera? How do I talk to the camera? How do I launch a YouTube channel? All the things. How do I speak to the camera? All the tiny little things that were never really needed in my career as an orchestral violinist suddenly had to be learned very quickly. Just a lot of digital skills, as I'm sure you're very well versed in.
Yes. Yes. And your content is so great. You have so many wonderful tips. Really robust YouTube channel that I'll invite people to visit. Isn't that funny how we start to follow these breadcrumbs and that leads us to something wonderful, like in your case, to
Yeah.
creating all of this content online. Tell us a
Yeah.
sorry, tell us a little bit more about the type of programs that you offer.
Yeah, so I predominantly have a large coaching program. It's a very intensive program called VIP coaching program, and I help high level violinists who want to master their instrument and become more confident on stage. And that came about because I was taking auditions And I decided to invest in some performance coaching. So I actually trained with Dr. Don Green, whom I know you've interviewed before and talked about many times. It changed my life. Working with a performance psychologist for that many hours, that intensely, really started to change my mindset, the way I approached fear, the way I approached discomfort, the way I approached performing, even though I wasn't feeling the most confident. Having someone push you to really train you so that you get, let's say, tougher under pressure, but also learning how to manage your nerves so that whatever symptoms you have, you develop, you cultivate and train more skills so that you control the level of nerves that you experience, as well as from the other angle, training how strong you feel despite how nervous you may feel. So doing this kind of, let's say, call this toughness training, it was really life changing because when I walked out of auditions previously, I would feel deflated, disappointed, emotionally devastated, all of the things.
Mhm.
And after I trained with Dr. Green, I walked out of a Los Angeles Philharmonic audition, actually. I was elated. I have never walked out of an audition feeling so happy. What changed? Me working on myself. So if I knew that this journey for so many violinists taking auditions, and you and I both know that taking auditions is a punishing road. It is so emotionally draining. You're spending money, you're spending time, you're investing your all of your energy into one job opportunity after another, and you may be disappointed and defeated and eliminated over and over and over again. And that can get really, really um, it can suck your energy.
Yeah.
And how can we manage to keep the sense of courage and resilience up? This is something that I think is possible to train, but with the right guidance. Because if we don't have the, let's say, the right mindset to overcome these continual disappointments, then it's really going to be a lot harder to get that dream job. So when I came out of that Los Angeles Philharmonic audition, so happy, I knew something had changed in me. And because of that, when I started, let's say, putting online content out and helping students get better on the instrument, I knew that I wanted people to feel better about playing, about sharing, about performing, about training for auditions. Part of the inspiration for me was also working on a doctoral thesis that incorporated holistic health and specifically
Mhm.
stress, emotional stress, mental stress. How does that play in a violinist's life? For me, in my doctoral dissertation, it was predominantly about injury prevention, but it's also about performance confidence, and it's also about conquering fears and showing up and being your happiest performing self. And I know that you're such a great inspiration about that because I've seen your content, which is also really, really inspiring. And I love the fact that you have so much material that encourages a violinist to find the joy in practicing. I find a lot of inspiration from your content in that regard. And so I like to take that and put that back into what we pursue as a violinist who continually improves on our skills. I mean, what we're doing is basically black belt level violin. And at this level, we're finally playing with all of the psychology and the musicality and the artistry. And it's so easy to be sucked down by, let's say, the emotional hardships of, let's say, the audition process. So
Yeah.
I also see that teachers leave a big hole. There's a big gap when violinists start training for competitions, auditions, juries. They train them for the repertoire. Yes, that's absolutely necessary. They train them for the process of learning the notes and the style and the tempi and all of the technique. But what the big gap is left is that the student or the violinist is left not knowing how to cope with the stress, the performance nerves. And they come to me saying, I get so nervous, my bow is shaking. I've practiced so many times and then when I get to the stage, I blank out. I start shaking. I lose my memory. I freeze. I feel like a deer in headlights. These are actual things that people have said to me. So this to me sounds like there's something missing. There's a whole lot missing. I thought, you know what, this is a gap that I can help people with because I've done some training with a peak performance psychologist. I've conquered some of my own personal insecurities, fears, anxieties, nervousness. These are important skills for a performer. This is not just sports psychology, it's performance psychology for the performing musician. And if we leave all of these aspects out for a violinist, sure, you can play a C major scale, but can you play the C major scale under pressure
Yeah.
and feel happy about it? That's what I'm hoping to help people with.
Yes. I'm agreeing with every word you just said. Absolutely. And you have a great approach to teaching too. Can you share a little bit more about that? I know you have these different aspects of the musician, these different roles that the violinists play.
Oh,
Can you
okay, yeah. So maybe you're referring to the way I think of practicing, the different roles that we need to take when you are in a practice room. So I have a practice framework, which I call the detective, the scientist, and the athlete.
Yes, I love
So,
that. I think it's so
yeah.
great.
So the thing is, when we practice, and I love the fact that you had written this too. I love you had expressed it so well. Um, you people are practicing putting the bow to the string or their lips to the embouchure. I think you wrote that. And I thought it was so great, and they're not knowing what they're doing, so it turns out to be a mindless exercise. So with my framework of becoming a detective, a scientist, and an athlete, I try to prevent that from happening, the mindlessness, because as you and I both know that when we practice mindlessly, the results are not going to be the best.
Yeah,
So when we step into the role of a detective, I'm encouraging people to really start paying attention with their senses. So a detective will look carefully with their eyes for clues. And in our role, we would use predominantly our ears. And surprisingly, when we're busy putting the bow to the string, we don't have time to use the ears because we're so busy executing.
yeah,
It's so difficult to execute at the same time as listen objectively. Well, and this is where a recording device would come in so handy. But it is a good skill to be able to play and simultaneously listen with the utmost attention. And it is interesting to me that when we listen to our students, we can detect all of the details. But is it possible for us to get that gap between when we play and when we listen? Can we get that gap even tighter or shorter or non-existent? It may not be possible to get non-existent because we're still busy playing, but I think it is possible to develop this in audit this continually observant auditor role, being a true detective, like this Sherlock Holmes when you're playing, hearing every note that's out of tune. And surprisingly, when I'm busy learning, let's say, a new orchestral score, for the next concert, I'm too busy trying to figure out where my fingers moving, what's the bow, is it this is it up bow, is it down bow, is it spiccato? I'm busy processing this information. Meanwhile, both ears are shut off. This is what I mean by not playing the detective to your full potential. If I took a second to really, really, really play Sherlock Holmes, I would catch all the things that were dirty, not clean, not coordinated, not in tune, slowing down in tempo. So it really takes that dedication to becoming the best detective that you can possibly be. So to become a detective, I invite people to have a couple of questions. What is the first question? What are you hearing? And when I ask them, they actually don't know. They were too busy executing. They were too busy playing. They were too busy bowing, too busy putting down their fingers. They're too busy to listen. And so they can't answer the question, what did you hear? They just blank out. And I said, well, guess what? You're going to have to play it again and listen. So they play
yeah,
it again and then they hear it. So now
yeah,
they're able to answer the question, what went wrong? And if it goes wrong, then they often barrel through again and again and again. And I'll invite them, do you know why you're playing it again and again? And that's the next question. Why? Like,
yes,
why did it go wrong? Do you actually know? And they'll stop again. They don't know how to answer the question. Why did it go wrong? So that's where I can come in and help them and say, you know what, it's my job to ask you, why did it go wrong? Can you figure it out? I would love to become a person that helps the violinist teach themselves. If
yeah,
they can become their best coach, then I'm doing my job. So let me guide you. Why did it go? Why did it fall apart? If they can't answer the question, then I'll say, okay, I think it's because of this. Maybe your bow wasn't touching the D string at the right time. Maybe your left hand was a little bit late to your bow. Or maybe you had tension in the back of your body where because therefore the spiccato failed. Or maybe your left arm was tight before your shift. These are things that I will help. I will be the surrogate detective in the room. So I will be your Sherlock and help you figure out why. Then the next question is how? So this is where we go into the scientist phase. So now that you've identified where you'd like to improve and why it didn't work, then we can start asking the question, how do we make it better? So now we're going to move into this role and you say, well, now what are we going to do here? Do we need to put on a metronome? Do we need to put on a drone to fix intonation? Do we need to do a couple of practice drills, put it through a couple of different rhythms? Do we need to play it in chunks and then add a bar before it, add a bar after? These are all what I call scientific experiments. So that's why I call it being a scientist. Come up with the experiments and the drills that you can put your passage through in order to improve it. And then you're going to move to the third phase. Then when you decided, I'm going to try these 4 exercises, this metronome tempo, etc., then you're going to become the athlete and then do the drills. You're going to practice them, rehearse them, go through the paces, put in your time and woodshed. So now you've moved from detective to scientist to athlete. Now, when you're in athlete mode, you're going to rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Now, if it doesn't work, you go back a step and go back to the scientist mode, or you repeat the detective mode. You keep listening and you cycle through all these 3 modes. Now, these 3 people can merge into one, right? You can seamlessly shift through all these 3 different people. But for me, it helps to distinguish the 3 roles so that we're not putting the bow to the string or mindlessly playing and not knowing what role we're doing at any point in time. Because usually people will start playing and they're just being the player role,
Yeah.
but they're not listening. They're not diagnosing. They're not problem solving. They're not rehearsing. Now, rehearsing is so important for the athlete role because the point is to rehearse to the point where when you get to the performance, you feel solid. Many people will start practicing, but they haven't practiced to solidify. So
Yeah.
solidifying for me is the part of the athlete. You're being an athlete to solidify so that, let's say you're a basketball player and there's people, you have to do a 3-pointer shot and there's people waving their flags and just trying to distract you. Can you
Yeah.
do that under pressure? People
Yeah.
forget to train for that portion of
Yeah.
the training. So that's how the way I think of practicing and getting the most out of a practice session.
Yeah. Once again, I mean, I think the two of us are two peas in the pod.
Yeah,
I
we
agree
are.
with
Yes, we are.
yes. I agree with that last I mean, I agree with everything, but that last portion, it's the part that I call finger over mind because I'm such a
Yes.
huge advocate of, mind over finger, of
Yes.
course, because I see so many people jumping on the instrument without that little pause,
Yeah.
without that
Yes.
detective portion of, the
Yeah.
problem solving, the understanding what we're doing.
Yeah.
But then you gotta get to the finger over mind part where you train like the athlete until you could, like some of my colleagues I know can play a whole concerto while watching a baseball game.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible.
So, not that you want to do that while you're performing necessarily, but
No.
the fact that you could play
Hmm.
it with that level of disruption means that you're really in the state of mastery, and then
Yes.
you have freedom.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that takes training. That definitely takes conscious training. And it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work.
Yes. I totally agree.
Hmm.
Speaking of work, is there a favorite tool that you have in the practice room?
Oh, I like to use Tonal Energy app. It's a metronome and a tuner, and it's kind of like this intimidating spaceship because I still don't know how to use half of the functions. All I know
It's
how to do
it's very scary, I agree.
it's very scary. I know how to turn on the metronome. I know how to change the tempo. I know how to turn on a drone so I can practice my pitch. I can turn on the different intonation systems. So I set it to Pythagorean just, pi just in the left-hand corner. I know how to record myself. And of course, there's so many other functions that I still have people showing me how to use. I like to use that. That's my default metronome and tuner app. I think it was through your podcast I discovered Time Guru metronome app. It randomly deletes beats, so that really is a great tool to test your inner pulse. And
Mhm.
I am huge on inner pulse and rhythm. And I've been sitting on at least 2 audition committees recently with the National Ballet, and I get disappointed when people have, let's say, they may have really great pulse. I've heard some really great pulse lately, but rhythm is what I call personalized. They have their own personal version of a dotted rhythm. And I, we need to get accurate for auditions. So I get a little bit disturbed. We need to actually get those a triplet versus a 16th note versus a quintuplet, or even just feeling the inner subdivisions of a beat. Here's an example. Nutcracker, Tchaikovsky Nutcracker, the infamous overture, the first violin part is so scary.
Oh
So
my, yes.
we had 25 candidates. Okay, we had 25 candidates. Only one person out of 25 people actually demonstrated that they could hear the inner eighth, the offbeat eighth. Da, oh, da, 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 da. Only one person demonstrated
Mm,
that. That's what I'm talking about. And I
yeah,
mean, that's an easy exercise to do with the metronome. You put the metronome on that offbeat. Da, 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 da. You just practice with an offbeat, a metronome on the offbeat, or you just subdivide it yourself. It's so important to do that. And I
yeah,
think people, as violinists, we're so predominantly focused on tone and pitch, and rightly so. We don't have automatic tune pitch like a piano. We do have to work on pitch, but let's not do that at the expense of having great rhythm and having a solid pulse, which are two distinct things, as you and I
yeah,
both know. So we can have great pulse, but the rhythm may be uneven.
yeah.
And you may have great, evenly distributed rhythm. Dun, 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 right? And this pulse may be dun 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 da 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 da. I mean, this is a good rhythm, but it's getting faster and faster and faster. So having the ability to control rhythm and maintain pulse are two different skills to develop. So I actually did teach a class called Rock Solid Rhythm and Pulse, and so we did a whole
Oh,
bunch of exercises like that. Yeah, really, really cool.
oh, that sounds amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
I use Tunable app and it's very what's the word? Disruptive. When I record, let's say a scale, and with Tunable, I don't know if you use Tunable, but disruptive is not the word I'm looking for, but it will come to me. Disturbing. That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
This is the French side that just showed up right there. Um, you're practicing a scale and you can record it and then play it back and it will assess it for you and it will give you a grade of your intonation.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and then you can play it back at half the tempo or quarter the tempo. And then you
Wow.
get to see that when you're actually playing the scale, let's say 120 equals quarter and it's slurred by
Okay.
24, but you play it at half the tempo to realize how uneven it is.
Oh boy.
And we're going very fast, so we don't quite hear it,
Mm-hmm.
how uneven it is. But when you play it at half tempo, you realize how the rhythm is displaced. And this is sometimes why we have intonation issues in scales, let's say going down, is we're rushing certain notes.
Yeah.
And it's so disturbing.
Okay, I
But
am definitely going to get this app and become disturbed with you then.
but also enlightening. And it's a huge time saver because then you don't have to play through the scale 18 times and every time thinking, it's not great, it's not great,
Mm,
but I don't know what it is. Then you
okay,
just record it and then you know right away that, oh, okay,
perfect.
well, I am rushing that shift, which is why it's not
Uh-huh.
in
Okay,
tune.
I'm going to do this now. That's my newest hack from you. Thank you.
I keep talking of that if Tunable had some sort of program where I could make money every time I
Yes.
recommend it, it would
Yes.
I would make a racket. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
What is a habit that you have that you think contributed to your success?
Never give up.
Mm,
Resilience, emotional resilience. And that comes that I had to work for. It wasn't natural. Okay, so let's frame this here. Lynn was not naturally um positive thinker and work hard winner. Okay, so people may think, oh, Lynn may have had it easier when she was younger and this and that. That's not necessarily the case. I will tell you a true story. I have a friend in City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, principal viola, actually. So yeah, he and I studied with Mr. Fenyvish together. And we were in Schleswig-Holstein Festival one summer in Germany. And was it that summer or was it maybe previous to that? Because we studied together in Toronto for a couple of years with Mr. Fenyemish. And he said to me, Lynn, you're really negative. And so and the thing is, I've changed. I had a student actually, when I was a prof at Memorial University, she said, have you always been this positive? And I said, whoa, that's a big cry. That's a far cry from that previous comment. So I definitely had to work on this. I think the answer to this question, what's a driving force behind anyone's success, is to actively choose positivity.
Mhm.
And that's a job. It's actually work. It's not natural for most people, and neither was it for me. But once you start forcing yourself to see the positive nature in people, things, situations, places, events, disappointments, finding that proverbial silver lining, that's a cliche, but it is true. What happens after an audition? You don't get past the first round. Okay, so you have a choice here. You have a choice to go home with your tail wagging between your legs and cry into a cup of whatever you want to drink. However, you can actually make a choice to acknowledge your feelings of disappointment. I'm not saying you're not allowed to feel disappointed or sad. Absolutely, acknowledge those feelings. However, how fast, how efficiently can you turn that around to your benefit? For your positive future, for you to manifest the future of your dreams. When a door closes, a window will open. Some people don't look for that window.
Yeah.
So it's our job to look for those windows. And this is what I mean by cultivating an attitude of positivity, never give up, looking for all the greatness that comes in exchanges, even as something as small. Here's maybe an interesting tip to share. One of the things that has contributed to that is this attitude of gratitude. It's a cliche, but how I practice that is that my sister and we exchange a daily gratitude list by text every single day. And we have done that from 2015, I believe. It's many years later.
Mhm.
And can you imagine how many years of daily gratitude, a great daily gratitude practice where I'm forced, my sister's actually better at it than I am. She's very regular. I might miss a few days, but she's always regular. And she sends me these every single day. It reminds me that I have to come up with 10 different things. What are these 10 different things in my life that I'm grateful for or are positive? This has really changed my brain. And it's all about neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
So when something fires together, it wires together. And when you're looking for things to be grateful for, to see the positive lining, to see things that are beautiful in things that are dark, your brain starts to change. There's no doubt about it. Neuroplasticity has already proven that to us. So if this is one thing that I might recommend to people, how do you build your own success? Start with your mind. Start with an attitude of gratitude.
Oh, it's so beautifully said. And I think it's really important for people to truly hear what you said, which is it was something that you cultivated and nurtured in yourself,
Hmm.
that we don't have to be limited by these labels that maybe we've put on ourselves or other people have put on us, the conditioning of our upbringing sometimes, or the people we hang out with, or sometimes it's the education we receive, the environment we're
Hmm.
in. We
Hmm.
can move past those habits, those labels, and truly shape who we are through
Absolutely.
intention.
Yes. I mean, we see that all the time and with people who start from very difficult circumstances, life circumstances, or difficult situations, family situations, political situations, war-torn countries, and yet they still show this unbelievable strength and resilience. Why? It's because of the decisions they make,
Yeah, yeah,
not because someone handed them their life on a platter. They
yeah.
built that platter, and you
I
can
do.
build it by one word and one thought at a time.
Yeah. I'm going to allow myself to insert a little story there because I completely agree. I had some periods in my life that were, more difficult than others. And gratitude was such a huge one. And what I started doing is I got myself some mala beads and I have
Hmm.
them everywhere. Actually, them right here. This was
Oh,
made
those are
for me
pretty.
by a dear
Wow.
friend in Toronto.
Oh, they're beautiful.
I have them in the car. I have them by my bed. I have them in my violin case. So I have mala beads. and I would drive somewhere. If I got there maybe 5 minutes earlier, then I would have to walk to whatever rehearsal. I would get them out, and I would try to say 108 things I was grateful for.
Wow.
And that
Amazing.
I agree in the power of looking for things to be grateful for and how it shapes who we become.
Yep. 100%.
There's always a mention of coffee. There's always a beat for coffee in there.
Oh, for me, it's my bed. I love my bed. I'm always grateful for my bed.
I'd love to hear about maybe the doubts or resistance that you had to face on your journey.
Oh, for sure. Doubts, yes. Resistance. Okay, so biggest doubt was insecurity. People think, "Oh, you're so confident, Lynn." I'm not. Was not always confident. And insecurity has been something that I had to work on. Low self-esteem, part of it, low self-confidence, that was also part of it. So that had to be worked on as well. And imposter syndrome, I think many people will have some form of imposter syndrome, some people more than others, but I've definitely gone through imposter syndrome. When I first started producing content, when I first started teaching, when I first became a professor, I thought, how am I going to become a professor? I've not taught at this level. And I stepped in and said, am I actually doing this? Do I even know what I'm talking about? Can I even demonstrate this concerto? Do I even know how to properly demonstrate the difference between this technique and that technique? But the thing is, when you're faced with fear, from the training that I got from Dr. Green, is that you feel the fear and do it anyway. And that is an actual book from Dr. Susan Jeffers. And I love that title because, if anything from that book, I retain the title, the
Yeah.
spirit of that title. So what? I didn't know what I was doing when I first stepped into my first masterclass teaching my class, but I did it anyway. And the next day I did it again. The next week I did it again. And I kept doing it until this is what I say about preparing my income tax. Every year I prepare my income tax less and less badly than the previous year. So every time I do something that I'm afraid of, I know that the next time I'll do it, it'll be less bad the next time. It's always like an attitude that I will be better the next time. Every time you step into a situation of fear, yes, it may feel uncomfortable. Yes, you may not necessarily feel like you're the expert there, but you know what? If you don't try, you don't grow.
Yeah.
So this attitude of kind of biting it, take it in the chin and say, you know what? I won't grow unless I do this. I love how Brene Brown says you step into the arena. Get your foot into the arena.
Yeah. Well
That's how you
said.
can build courage. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. What a beautiful answer once again. How about the skills that you think young musicians studying should acquire in addition to play their instrument?
Oh, so this is, oh, it's a couple. My gosh. Um, well, mental and emotional resilience, as I mentioned, that's one. Thinking positively, that's another. Another one that I like to incorporate. I've been teaching this a lot in my classes lately. I incorporate a lot of breath work, mindful breath, and body awareness. I think a lot of violinists, including myself, have struggled with difficult technique and injury and tension, and also nerves. So the two, as I mentioned, my dissertation was on holistic health, and so these two things are inseparable. They're linked together. Like I say to people who I violinists who come to work with me, the link between your mind and your body is the breath. And the link between your body and your mind would be through the breath. So when we do breath work in my classes, every single class I lead some form of guided meditation, breath centering, focusing, body relaxation, any combination of those skills. And that's inspired by my martial arts training. So for the past couple of years, as a mature adult, I started karate. Not in my wildest dreams would I ever consider myself a martial artist because I'm a violinist needing to protect my fingers. And yet I found myself in a karate dojo. The biggest thing that I took away from studying a martial art is the focus training and the discipline and the perseverance. And I don't see those things as being detrimental to a violence at all. In fact, they are wonderful things. So to answer your question, what is one thing that a violinist can or a musician can incorporate? Well, we can incorporate the practice of mindfulness, the practice of breath work, conscious breathing. I mean, this is a multi-purpose, let's call this magic bullet solution to many things. Performance anxiety, body awareness, better focus when you're practicing, better control of your body under pressure, um, lower blood pressure, reduced heart rate. If you have sweaty palms, we can get rid of that too. Your brain is going to give you something to focus on so that your brain doesn't race in a mile a second with overthinking and catastrophic thinking when you're nervous. The breath is and practicing breath, oh, it can make you sleep better too.
Yeah.
So the breath is fantastic. If there's one thing that we can incorporate is just sneaking in breath throughout the day, and not just, I'm already breathing, Lynn, I'm already breathing. No, when I'm sitting on the subway tonight to go to work, I say to myself, this is my time. I'm going to take a breath. Let's count. I actually can feel my heart rate. I ask the people that I coach, put your thumb and your index finger together. Can you feel your heart rate? And people will start scrunching their eyes and they say, I can't. And I've done it so many times that I don't have to touch my fingers anymore. I can just sit on the subway and I feel my heart rate.
Mm.
And I can count. I use my own heart rate as my own metronome for my conscious breath work. So tonight when I go to work, I'll be sitting on the subway and I will tune in, get quiet, and just listen for my heart rate. Use that as my metronome, and I will count how many heart rates it will take for my inhale. The more you practice this, the more you can control your breath and your heart rate and your body as a result. And I can go as long, I don't know how long, it depends on how many heart rates, how fast your heart rate is, I guess. But at least 4 inhale, at least 4, if not 6 on an exhale. And if I only have time for one breath before, let's say, the phone rings or before I have to pay someone at the cash at the grocery checkout, then that's a great thing to add. And it's almost as easy to add as when I ask people, do you practice breath work? They said, no. Well, do you brush your teeth? They said, yes. Do you think that you could add one breath after you brush your teeth? I said, yeah, I guess I could do that. Well, there, you just slipped it in. It's really easy. I mean, I slip it in when I'm sitting on the subway, but once I start biking, with my knee getting better and stuff, actually, I am already biking now. Um, then I won't have so many subway moments to breathe, but it's easy to sneak in a breath here and there
Yeah.
when you take that, seize the moment, any quiet moment, you say, you know what, this is self-care as well. This is my moment. I'm going to take at least just one breath. One breath will do it. And that's easy to slip into anyone's day.
Mm. I love that. I don't want to hijack your actionable tip, but I feel like that's an amazing actionable tip to implement.
Yeah, that is my actionable tip. In fact, what I do before my practice sessions and the classes that I teach and the group practice sessions that I lead group practice sessions for my VIP students. I call them ninja sessions, practicing like a ninja. And I lead all those sessions with guided breath or a visualization of some sort. So the actionable tip that I would share with people is that when I get ready to practice, I know that meditating and fitting in meditation and fitting in breathing is hard for everybody, including me. I find it hard to fit in too. So the easiest thing to do is to habit stack, meaning that you're going to stack one habit with something you already do. So something that I already do is open up the violin case and start practicing. I literally scratch into my practice journal 1 minute. And I put that down as the first thing. I'll do 1 minute. I turn on my timer on my smartphone, and 60 seconds will go just like that.
Yeah.
Boom, done. Oh, that was fast. I just did 1 minute, 60 seconds of breathing. I'm done. Check that off. And I love the checking off in my practice journal because I give myself a pat on the back. I give myself a little proverbial sticker for good work. So I love checking that off. It makes me feel like I accomplished something good for myself, good for my
Mm.
brain, and it helps me get more focused for the practice session. And when I do it longer, when I breathe for longer, boy, do I ever get a lot out of my practice session. I am more focused than ever before. So if I were to recommend something for effective practicing, try some focused breathing before you start working and see what it does for your brain and your focus and your concentration.
I love this so much.
Okay.
Lynn, it's just so wonderful to speak with you. I love your content so much. I think every listener should hop on YouTube, catch every video that you share out there. Violinist, not violinist, doesn't matter, because you teach wonderful principles and you have such a wonderful presence. We can really feel that love and care that you were talking about when you were referring to your teacher. And it's just so full of great advice, and you explain it so well. And you have all of these wonderful programs. Before we say goodbye, can you tell us a little bit about where everyone can find you? What offerings do you have out there? If you have any fun workshop coming up very soon, tell us everything, and I'll make
Yes.
sure to have all
Okay.
of these links in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me online at lynnkuo.com, lynnkuo.com, and find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. My handle is at Violin Kuo, VIOLYNNKUO. And upcoming, I have a very exciting revamp of my orchestra audition mastery boot camp. I did it before. It was a 3-day boot camp online. It was a huge success. People want to do it again. In fact, some people actually want to take it for the second time. So I will be doing that between April 8th and April 12th, 2024. So if you want to get more information, you can go to my website and let's see, somehow you can find one of my free resources. For example, I got a lot of free resources. There's a menu on the top that says teaching, and then you go to free resources. If you sign up for any of my free resources, that'll get you started.
Wonderful. Lynn, thank you so much for coming and speaking with me today.
Thanks for asking me, Renee. It was great to talk to you.